What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz, and welcome in to another edition of Couz's Corner. Pull up a chair, grab a bar stool, sit back, relax, and enjoy college football, what I like to call college football happy hour. It's what I call my live streams here, as I'm live here going to talk a little bit about the new statement that was released by the Pac-12 Conference, what that might mean for the Big 12, if anything. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about some coaching news that affects the Big 12 that came out today, and then uh, just let you guys take the conversation whatever direction you want here in the chat. So before we get started, please hit the thumbs up button as you come in. Please, like I said, if you want to drop something in the comment section, let me know if you want to lead the chat a certain direction. And if you guys feel froggy and want to throw me a super chat, then I'll be sure to read that super chat on the air, and the donation will go to help my channel. I appreciate everybody coming on here. Thanks, Vernon Sheldon Witter. Thanks for hopping on, man. He said it means they were in desperation mode. Yeah, real quick, I want to start off by just reading the article here. Before I do, though, or the statement rather, before I do, though, I want to just kind of give a little bit of background. Most of you probably know this, but basically, the Pac-12 there's been a lot of rumors floating around that some Pac-12 teams may be interested in joining the Big 12 because they're not happy with the direction of the Pac-12 media deals. We all know the Pac-12 has yet to land a media deal, and that's got, there have been reports out by several media sources where ADs from some of the Pac-12 schools are getting antsy. They're getting nervous, and they're a little bit worried about not getting a deal done that they like. And we all know it's taking a really long time to get this done. The Big 12 jumped ahead of them in line, securing their deal before the Pac-12 could. And that has limited some of the inventory, or some of the demand, rather, for Pac-12 football, or Pac-12 sports in general, for that matter. So that's got a lot of people a little bit nervous in Pac-12 country. Several, though, have come out, like, I think the AD of Arizona has come out and said they're all, in lockstep with one another, basically said that Arizona's not planning to leave the conference and others aren't planning to leave the conference. And then there's been a few others that have come out as well. I think the Utah AD has made some statements on Twitter. I think Colorado, maybe. There's been a few schools. I don't remember all of them, but I think there's been a few schools that have come out in support of the Pac-12 and saying that they are united and they do plan to stay together. So with that said, let me share the statement with you for those of you who may not have seen it already. I'm sitting here in my hotel room tonight. Didn't know if I was going to be able to do a live stream or not, but I thought, you know what? I don't have anything to do right now, so I'll go live and talk to my peeps here, my Big 12 and West Virginia peeps. Here it says, here's the statement from the Pac-12 Conference. It says, joint statement from the 12 Pac-12 Conference board members. The Pac-12 universities look forward to consummating successful media rights deal, and has deals as S in parentheses there, in the very near future. Based upon positive conversations with multiple potential media rights partners over the past weeks, we remain highly confident in our future growth and success as a conference and united in our commitment to one another. And that came out February 13th, which I'm recording this on the 14th. So came out on the 13th, which was one day ago. So basically, the key statements there that I took away from that was media rights deals. So they could be making more than one deal, and then the use of the word multiple media partners. So they are obviously in conversations with multiple media partners, which that's not really a surprise because we've heard ESPN, we've heard Amazon, we've even heard a few others being thrown out as possibilities, but with ESPN and Amazon likely being the two companies to jump all over this. One of the things that I would be concerned about if I were the Pac-12, and I've heard this on actually a couple different podcasts. I heard it on College Football Peek Around the Corner with Greg Flugauer, and then I heard it again earlier today on Sikkim 365, on their 365 Sports show on YouTube. They brought up some good points. Disney has been making some cuts, and they've made some statements that they may not be as aggressive in media deals, basically. That's concerning. And number two, you look at NBC, for example. NBC is looking to get more aggressive in their pursuit of NBA games. So, the NBC doesn't seem real interested in getting, becoming part of this deal. They've already got their Big Ten deal. They've already got Notre Dame. So what would they need with the Pac-12? So there's just the point to that is this. Really, the only suitors you have left are ESPN, who wants that Pacific time zone. And there have been reports out there that they're not going to be real aggressive because they don't really need that much inventory. They've already got the ACC. They're going to have the Big 12. They're all in with the SEC too. So, the ESPN is going to have plenty of college football inventory. The only thing they don't have is that late time slot that the Pac-12 can give them. So it's very possible that the ESPN may not want to be the primary rights holder for the Pac-12, which means they'll have to rely on Amazon, which means they're going to have to rely on streaming, which, as we all know, still has not surpassed linear cable as the top providers of live sports. I mean, live sports people are still primarily going to cable. Now, we know the NFL did a deal with Amazon this past season that seemed to have done pretty well. Maybe they used that as their kind of their model. But, the Pac-12 is not the NFL. The NFL is the most popular sporting league in the world. I don't know about the world. You've got soccer, but, at least in the United States. So I don't know that the Pac-12 is going to be able to even be in that conversation. But that statement that they put out to me, and I've heard it said, I heard John Kurtz talk about it on his show last night. Anytime an organization or a person has to put out a vote of confidence publicly like that, it's usually not a good sign. It usually means they're trying to quell some rumors, to put a stop to some rumors out there, or maybe to even give kind of a fake, put off a fake vibe, so to speak, fake bravado, whatever you want to call it, to make it look like they're united when they're really not. I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see, are they really this close? Like my thumbnail shows, are they really this close to striking a media deal? Or, are they just showing this front to try to stop the rumors that are out there that could be, making it harder for them to nail a deal down? So let's see if there's any comments in here. Billy Ferguson says, hearing the Pac-12 deal is at $21 million per team per year. That's interesting, Billy. If you don't mind, drop in there, man. Where are you hearing that at? I hadn't seen that because I've been on the road most of the day today, so there may have been some news that I've missed. Alan Walker says the schools are in panic mode. I heard something that something has to be done by March or the commission is going to be fired. I saw that same thing, Alan. Oregon and Washington are wanting $35+ million per school. And then Vernon Witter says it's not going to happen. Yeah, I don't see $35 million happening at all. Matter of fact, I think at this point they may be lucky to get to the 31.5, 31.6, whatever it is that the Big 12's at. That move by Brett Yormark has turned out to be to jump in line has turned out to be an absolute home run of a move. I was a little bit, I don't know. I wasn't upset about it. I mean, I trusted him to make the right move, but I guess I was a little bit pessimistic as to whether or not that was the right move to make. Felt like maybe we left some money on the table. And then today, when I heard Mac Rhodes, the Baylor AD, on the 365 show, in their interview that they do with him every week, they asked him a similar question. And he basically said, yeah, we may have sacrificed a little bit of money, but we got stability. We got that, to know we stabilized the league. We got everybody's granted rights deals, in place. Everybody agreed to this 6-year deal. So we, may have left a little bit of money on the table, but with the economic climate that's out there right now, with some of these companies making cuts like ESPN, Disney, ESPN's owned by Disney, but you get my point. Companies like Disney and these other companies making cuts. I think I've read where Netflix maybe have made cuts. There's been a lot of different articles out there, but there have been multiple media outlets out there that have made cuts to staff, that have cut back on how aggressive they're being in specific types of programming, some even in sports. So that, with that being known now, looking back, Brett Yormark's move looks even better now. Because if the Big 12 had waited, they might be in the same boat the Pac-12's in right now, floundering. Not when it's time for them to start negotiating their deal, they might be in the same boat the Pac-12's in right now. And but because they were able to get their deal done basically 18 months early, essentially, they don't have to worry about it anymore. And I just think that, was a great move on the part of Brett Yormark in the Big 12. Jeremy Croy says, and he's a channel member, guys, by the way. You see that little symbol by his name? That means he's a channel member. Jeremy, thank you for your support. He says, how much does, and by the way, one of the benefits of being a channel member, you get priority comments during live chats. So your comments will be brought to the forefront, and I'll be more than likely, or I can't talk tonight, guys. I will be more likely to select your chat if you are a channel member. It says, how much does WVU make a year? Is it more than 21? Yes, it is more than 21. Well, I'd have to look back, Jeremy. I think it's around 24-ish right now, but that's just a media deal part. That doesn't count college football playoff money, NCAA money, and all the other stuff. And that's going to go up with the new media deal once it kicks in 2026 or 2025, whenever. I think it's 26 that it kicks in. It might be 25, but anyway, then they'll be making $31.6 million a year. It'll actually go up. Jeremy also says, one thing that concerns me is if Pac-12 – one thing that concerns me is if we have away games for Pac-12 teams, will I be watching games after midnight? Yeah, that's a good point. That would be if you see like a Big 12, Pac-12 merger type thing, which some people have, said they'd like to see. I personally, as a West Virginia fan, I don't want to see that. Obviously, because it makes we already struggle with travel. I don't want it to be any, for our Olympic sports and basketball and stuff. I don't want to see it get any worse. Billy Ferguson says Big 12 needs more teams to help West Virginia, UCF, et cetera, with travel. I agree, Billy. I agree. Too many of these schools are out on islands. At least West Virginia and Cincinnati have each other now to kind of be, travel partners, so to speak, if they need to be. Aaron Lovell says, I'm an SEC guy, so I'm outside looking in. But the Big 12 did a much better job on securing their future than the Pac did. I agree. It's good to hear an outsider's perspective, Aaron, because sometimes we have a tendency, a lot of us have a tendency to be biased. Let me adjust my camera here a little bit, guys. But anyway, I have a tendency to be biased in our evaluations. I know I can be at times because obviously I wave the Big 12 flag. Luke Rhodes says, why is the basketball team a completely different squad on the road? Well, I think it's just a Big 12, man. The Big 12 is just a very tough conference, and those teams are good, and, that's why they call it home court advantage. And when a team is good, it makes it even harder to win at their place. And West Virginia is no different. But, yeah, there's been a lot of rumors and stuff coming out about this stuff, man. I don't know if you guys follow MHVER3 on Twitter. He's been coming out. There's a lot of rumors out there about Notre Dame and the ACC, and I mean, it's just crazy stuff. I don't do videos on all of it because it's so much of it is conjecture and speculation, and I don't want to be one of these guys that just throws stuff against the wall to see what sticks. That's not what I'm about. Not what my channel's about. I'm not saying that that's wrong. It's just not who I am and not how I want to. There's other channels out there who focus on that kind of stuff and on speculation and on conference realignment, and I don't want to do that. But you get my drift. Tony Altamore says most is nonsense. Yeah, I get you, Tony. I know what you mean, man. At the end of the day, and I actually glad you popped in, Tony, because you reminded me of something. I read something the other day, or actually I heard it on a podcast. Basically, it's this. Arizona State and Arizona do not want to leave without the other one. Okay. And they don't want to, and I think it's Arizona, or it's Arizona State one. I need to go back and watch the podcast again, but one of the Arizona schools would not want to leave the Pac-12 without Stanford and Cal. And the Arizona schools also are kind of tied together because they're part of the Arizona Board of Regents, or whatever they call it. They have the same Board of Regents, just kind of like Cal and UCLA does, I guess, a similar situation, and they're kind of tied at the hip, so to speak. At least that's some of the rumors out there. So one doesn't want to leave without the other, and they also don't want to leave without Stanford and Cal. Well, Stanford and Cal don't want to leave Oregon and Washington behind. So it's because of all that, even though they might be upset with how the deal's going and how they might not be happy with Kliavkoff and some of the things he said and done, at the end of the day, I think what we're going to see is this. I think we're going to see the Pac-12 go out and grab San Diego State. I think we're going to see them grab SMU, and I think we're going to see them get back to 12 teams, and I think we're going to see them solidify themselves. They're going to have to take less money, obviously. They're going to have to take a media deal that's probably in the 30 to 32 million range, or probably right around the same number the Big 12 is getting. And I think they're going to have to stay where, and I think they'll stay put. And I think that's what's going to happen at the end of the day. No matter how much some of us in Big 12 country, not me, but just some of us want it to happen, I don't think it's going to, because I think the Pac-12 schools, their culture is so much different than what the Big 12's is from an academic standpoint, from an endowment standpoint, there's just so many different things, and even from just a social culture standpoint. When you look at the city some of these schools are located in, I just don't think some of these schools want to join the Big 12, and it's not a slight at the Big 12 as much as it is just it's just they're too different. Their values don't align, their goals don't align, their vision doesn't align. It's just like two organizations, two companies, man. If you got a company company A wants to buy out company B or partner with company B, it's not going to work if the two companies don't share the same vision, don't have the same end goals, and all that. And even though TV ratings is what drives TV revenue, that does not drive expansion decisions necessarily. It's the presidents and the boards who decide what teams join conferences at the end of the day. And a lot of times they are driven by academics and those types of things. Whether us sports fans want to admit it, whether we like it, that's just how it is. Now, am I saying it's impossible and it's not going to happen? No, I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, the Pac-12, there could be so much animosity behind closed doors. Somebody could say, hey, screw this. I'm not dealing with this. I'm going to the Big 12. It could happen. I think it's highly unlikely, but it could happen. Jeremy Croy says for a while people were saying there will be two super conferences. I don't see it going that way. ACC and Big 12 are currently too strong. Jeremy, I don't see it going that way in the near future, but I could see that happening within the next 10 to 20 years, to be honest with you. I think the Big 12, the money, the separation in money and the financial separation is getting so great that I just don't see it, man. I just don't know how. It's going to be hard not to move that direction, I guess, is where I'm trying to go. Tony says neither is going anywhere. Both are attached to the teat of the state of California for their mother's milk of students, alumni engagement, and fundraising, and to stand Cal for academic prestige. And that's, that's kind of what I'd heard, and also for recruiting purposes. Let's not forget when it comes to football or any sport for that matter, these Western schools like to recruit the state of California, man. And if they, that's why I think another reason I think they'll bring San Diego State into this conference. They want to be able to recruit California and make their schools attractive to California high school athletes. So what else we got in chat here? We got Tony again saying ASU is upset because they have been told to sit down and shut up because their president was leading supporter of the hated Larry Scott. Been told bettors now have to clean up mess that they caused. I got you. Yeah. Yeah, I heard that Arizona State were huge supporters of Scott. I'd heard that before. Thanks, Tony. He says, great analogy. Appreciate that. Alan Walker says, great stuff, man. That's why I listen to you and John Kurtz. Thanks, buddy. I try to be – look, I'm a Big 12 guy. I love the Big 12. I'll defend the Big 12. You guys have probably seen me do that on Twitter and even on here, but I also try to be realistic. And the money just – it doesn't make sense for a school. Let's you choose Arizona for an example. Why does it make sense for Arizona to leave a conference they've been in for decades with like-minded institutions that are closer in geography to go to another conference where they're not like-minded as much and they're further away geographically for basically the same amount of money? I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. I don't, even if they have, yes, they might have to go the streaming route, but at the end of the day, I think that the money is going to still be a little bit heavier factor than the streaming and the coverage. And I think by the end of the media agreement, which will probably be in the 5-6 year range, I'm guessing, because that's what the other conferences are doing. By the time they get to their media rights deal, streaming will probably be even more popular by then, and it could end up being a pretty good move at the end of the day. To be honest with you, we're giving the Pac-12 a hard time about streaming. I mean, they maybe they're ahead of the curve here. This could end up being a blessing in disguise for them. Luke Rhodes says, all this makes me miss the good days of the Big East. Everything seemed to make sense. It did, man, didn't it? Until they started trying to make a basketball conference into until they started to bring football schools into a basketball conference, and then it just became chaos, man. At that point, Larry Pilgrim's in here. He's a Pac guy, very, very, very good football fan, college football fan, good supporter of my channel too. He says that Tony Altamore had someone arguing BYU is a flagship university in Utah. He's a Utah fan. R. Webb, thanks for hopping in, man. I know you're very. I see you a lot on John Kurtz. He says, Couz, one problem about Cal recruiting is the talent base is falling due to the declining popularity of football. I hadn't heard that, R. Webb. That's a very interesting comment, man. I hadn't heard that, but I wouldn't. I mean, I'm not a West Coast guy. I don't know much about the West Coast, so I wouldn't have known that anyway. Tony Altamore says these people don't even know what the words they say mean. Larry Pilgrim says, good luck to the Mountaineers, man. We need it. Our basketball and football programs are at very low points right now, man. It's which the basketball team, hope's not lost. They still have a chance to get in the NCAA tournament, but it's going to be really tough, man. They've got to win at least 3 more games, at least 3 of their next 6 games. And in the Big 12, as you probably know, it's extremely hard to do. Aaron Lovell's in here. He says, or that's Tony again. I hit the wrong one. Aaron Lovell says, Arizona and Arizona State are a lot like Texas and Texas A&M. They don't like one another. It just takes one to jump. That's possible. Like I said, I heard it on another podcast. Greg, college football speaker around the corner with Greg Pfluger, which I watch a lot, by the way. I recommend you guys go check his channel out. He's doing really great work over there. He's a Big Ten fan, but he covers all of college football. He's always on top of these realignment stories and in the news, and he kind of takes a pragmatic approach, kind of like I do. He doesn't get into a whole lot of speculation. I mean, obviously there's some speculation goes into all this. I mean, even media people speculate from time to time, but he doesn't get way out there with things, and he tries to be objective and fair and honest, and just shares what he shares what he reads and what he hears, and he does supposedly have some sources that are in a few programs that are like boosters and things like that. And he actually got his hands on a letter that was sent to him, and he had permission to read the letter on air, but it was from an Arizona State booster who said some of the stuff I said earlier about Arizona and Arizona State being tied to each other, and one of them being tied to Cal and Stanford. That was in that letter. So, and he's supposedly is a well-connected booster to Arizona State. Larry Pilgrim, thanks for the $10 super chat, my man. He says, because you are a good person, Couz, thanks for the respect, as I respect all fans as well, except the Bicycle College, and you will understand why soon. I got you, man. I'm assuming you're talking about BYU when you say Bicycle College. And can you explain what that this is probably a dumb question, but can you explain what that means, assuming it's appropriate to share? If not, send it to me in a DM or something. But thanks for the support, man. Larry Pilgrim, $10 super chat. Romeo One Kenobi says basketball is trying at least just in the best conference in the nation. That's true. Tony says R. Webb, all the more reason folks should pay more attention to the Fun Belt. Romeo One Kenobi says bicycle, Penn State. Oh man, that's a low blow to Penn State. But yeah, I'm a little bit out of the loop on the bicycle thing. Maybe I'm a little naive or ignorant when it comes to that, but I'm assuming, Larry, since you're a Utah fan, you're probably talking about BYU. So far, BYU fans have been super nice to me online and whatnot. I've got a lot to watch my show here. I've got several that have, that I communicate with on Twitter. Okay, I get it now. The missionaries makes sense. LDS missionaries ride bicycles on their missions. Makes sense. I get it now. I just kind of went, it slid right over my bald head, guys. Right over it. Slid right off. All right. Thanks, Earl. I appreciate that, man. Thanks for the education. Browns and Beers says, I think Mormons ride bicycles when they're going door to door. Yeah. When they come to my door, they're always walking. And I don't see Mormons as much as I don't see Mormons a whole lot in my area. I see Jehovah's Witnesses more frequently, but I don't want to get into religion. It's not a good place to go here. Might lose some people. Their arrogance is worse than ours. Missionary, right? Gotcha. Okay, their arrogance. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. The UCF fans have been the ones that have been arrogant so far, man. They started talking trash the day the schedule came out. I mean, it was like, we're better than you are. I mean, it was like, holy crap, you haven't even played a game yet, man, and you're already talking smack. Jiminy, I can tell they're going to be fun to deal with. DF Oss says, BYU fan here. I have great respect for Utah Utes. I think the Utes are great people with every reason to be excited about their team. Thanks for that comment, DF Oss. And I'm sure that Larry wasn't referring to every single fan. Just for me, for example, there are certain fan bases that I get a lot more flack from than others. And sometimes I'll say, well, that fan base, it's not a reference to the entire fan base, to every individual. It's just more of Cincinnati, for example. I get some of the flack. I probably get more flack from Cincinnati fans than some others, for whatever reason. I mean, like, you can make one little minor mistake in a video, or miss one detail, whatever, and they'll jump all over you, man, like you're some idiot. I mean, they will crucify you online and stuff like that. I probably get it more from like Cincinnati fans, for example, but I also have communicated with a lot of really respectful and nice Cincinnati fans too. So also, I'm sure he was talking about the fan base just in general, not every individual. Jeremy Croy, channel member, thanks for hopping back in, man, says, this has bugged me for years. When they talk about TV markets and expansion talk, are they talking about population in the geographic area or number of fans that watch the games? It's both, Jeremy. Those kind of go hand in hand to an extent. Obviously, the more people that are in the market, the more chance you have of them watching the games. But there are exceptions to that, and I think I know where you're going. For example, SMU. SMU's in Dallas-Fort Worth, one of the largest cities in America, one of the largest TV markets in America. They only average about 200,000 fans per game as far as TV ratings go. Thank you to Mr. Tony Altamore for that information, by the way. They only average about 200,000 viewers per week on their football games, because Dallas, you've got TCU, you've got the University of, Texas, that they dominate the state. You've got all these other schools in Texas. Plus, I'm sure there's some Oklahoma State and Oklahoma fans, sprinkled in, Houston, all the other schools, right? So it's not necessarily a one-to-one thing, but and in the world of streaming today, Jeremy, the way I understand it, and if somebody like Tony or anybody in here knows how to explain this better, let me put it in the comments. But the way I understand it is, with streaming, like, you got to pay I think they call it a carriage fee. You have to pay a carriage fee to get certain networks, right, or certain services. And if the more people in that market, the more people they can charge for a carriage fee. Like if you want to buy the ESPN package to get certain channels, you may, if you want to watch your team bad enough, you may get that package to watch your team, right? Even though you won't watch every channel in that package. And streaming service is the same way. Like, if you stream a game, there are more households in that market. Because of the number of households in the market, that's a greater chance that you'll get more people to subscribe to that service. I think I explained it right. Man, that's confusing. But basically, the more people there, the more subscriptions you get, and or the more people you get to upgrade their cable. Whatever. I mean, it's somewhat goes hand in hand. What's up, Bradley? Thanks for hopping in, man. I think I saw another channel member hop in. Yep, Big Dan T. Thanks for hopping in, brother. He's another channel member. Says E. Gordon Gee is LDS. So yes, he is. Anyway, good to see you, Couz. Yeah, E. Gordon Gee is the president of West Virginia, is actually a Mormon. So he will probably he's probably embracing the addition of BYU, I would imagine. And actually, I didn't even know that until Big Dan told me about that, because Big Dan attended West Virginia and knew about E. Gordon Gee's faith. But anyway, Browns and Beers says, drove past Princeton on my way to the Charlotte airport to go to the W Texas game. It was a fun trip outside of the game. Yeah. I'm glad you had a good time, man. Anytime I fly, which is rare, but when I do fly, I usually fly to Charlotte as well, because it's only a 3-hour drive for me. Hop, skip, and jump right down Interstate 77. I'm at the airport where I need to be, man. Pretty, it's the closest major airport to me, actually, is Charlotte, 3 hours away. The challenges of living in BFE. For those of you who don't know what BFE means, look it up. I'm not saying it loud on air. It might get me demonetized. But honestly, I try not to make that word a part of my regular vocabulary anyways, even though I do let it slip occasionally. St. Luke left. Honestly, what UC fans. That's funny. Roll me one. DFL says, may the Utes succeed in all of their efforts to reach their goals. Tony Altamore says, go Utes. Wait a minute, Tony, you're supposed to be a USC fan. What's wrong with you? No, I'm just kidding. Tony's just an ambassador for the Pac-12 and most of college football. I won't say most, because I know there's a few out there he's not real big fans of. Larry Pilgrim says, I spent a ton of money on gear. A few bucks more for Prime Sports is fine with me. And I think that's the way most people feel, Larry, and that's why they want to get in these big markets, man. I mean, Rutgers, for example. Rutgers doesn't have a massive, passionate fan base, but there's like 15 million people or whatever the number is, 5 million. I don't know the number. 5 million people in New York City. I mean, if they can even get just a small sliver of that 5 million to subscribe to their network, Big Ten network or whatever it is, I mean, think about that. And that's another thing. These conference networks play a role in this. You've got the Big Ten network. The more subscribers they can get to the Big Ten network, the more money the conference makes, the more money the teams make. Same thing with the Pac-12 network. If they're able to monetize it and get it rolling. Romy one says, I know the zip code to BFE 25678. DFL says, when BYU and Utah play, I always cheer for the good plays. There are plenty of great plays on both sides of the football among both teams. Hey, man, I like this friendly banter amongst opposing fan bases here. You don't see that too often. So I love it in here, man. Little trash talk's okay too, as long as it's respectful, but it's got to be all in fun and nothing personal. I've never been good at trash talk, so it's not my forte. When I was younger, just full disclosure here, this is totally off topic. When I was younger, I was kind of thin-skinned, so I didn't do trash. I didn't want other people trash talking me, so I didn't trash talk anybody else. I stayed in my lane. But now that I've started doing this, and of course I work in sales too, I've developed a thick skin over time, so it doesn't bother me as much anymore. But when I was younger, man, I was pretty thin-skinned. I'm not gonna lie. Had to grow a pair, as they say. Thank you for making this comment, Vernon. He says we need to look at UConn. They are so close to New York as Rutgers. Yes, great point. And I did a video on UConn not long, a few months back. I think the Big 12 really needs to take a hard look at UConn, man, because which they ultimately want to be in the ACC, I think, but I'm not sure if that's realistic, at least in the short term. So I think Brett Yormark ought to make a trip, and maybe he already has. Who knows? But you're right. If we could get UConn, we could get a large portion of the New York market potentially. Not to mention the rest of the Northeast. There's a lot of UConn. Yeah, and UConn's fan base is actually larger. I don't have Tony's fan base size rankings in front of me, but UConn's fan base is actually a lot larger than you'd think. They have a pretty large fan base, actually. And we all know how good their basketball is. Roll Me Once says the Big 12 can get a TV deal with Wrestler or Brazzers. Oh, man. Charles M., thanks for hopping on, man. He says UConn and UMass, too. I'm not a big fan of UMass. UConn's football program is kind of on the come up, so I'd rather them grab UConn. I'm not a big fan of grabbing basketball-only schools, just to be frank with you. The only way I would want them to do that is if they get teams like UConn, UMass, or I said basketball only, like Villanova, schools that would make West Virginia's travel a little bit easier in basketball. That's the only way I would want them to grab any basketball only schools, and even then I'd be skittish about it because of what happened in the Big East, where you had so many basketball only schools mixed with football schools, and it just wasn't a good mix, and it ended up killing the conference. Jeremy Croy says, as always, great podcast, Couz. I had to jump off. Hope everyone watching will support your channel. I encourage us so we can keep getting quality content. Thank you, Jeremy, man. Thank you so much, buddy, for all your support. Big Dan T with the $9.99 super chat. Thanks to Big Dan T. Says, I like to talk with my pads, LOL. But am I just dreaming to think that BYU and UH, talking about Houston, is just the first shoe to drop for Utah and SMU or others? I don't know if I know what you're talking about specifically, Dan. First shoe to drop as far as what? You talking about realignment? You talking about just realignment and guys moving teams moving conferences in general, or is there something more specific you're referring to? But I do think SMU is going to end up in the Pac-12 along with San Diego State. But I don't see Utah moving anywhere, at least not in the short term. I think they're going to stay in the Pac-12, and the Pac-12 is going to. You may have missed my talk in the beginning where I said I think the Pac-12 is going to stay together, at least in the short term. UMass and UConn are kind of like a pair. I'm assuming he's meant like UVA and UNC. No to UConn. Learn from the WAC. A coast-to-coast conference is not a good thing in the long run. I'm not a fan of it. I'll be honest with you. I mean, obviously, the West Virginia travel is brutal in the Big 12. I think it's hurt our programs. Not necessarily football, because you only play one game a week in football. But it's like basketball where you play multiple games in a week and you're playing on weeknights and you have class and all this stuff. Like, for example, they played at Baylor Monday night, Waco, Texas. They didn't get back to Morgantown until 4:30 a.m. Tuesday morning. They have class at 8 o'clock, man. It just doesn't make sense to me to be doing this to these student athletes, man. Yes, I know they have tutors, and I know they're flying on charter jets. I get all that, but it's still travel. You're changing time zones. It's still harder than driving 30, 2-3 hours up the road and playing a game and coming straight back home and sleeping in your own bed at night and getting a normal night's sleep. Gamecock Chuck, thanks for hopping on, man. He says if you get UMass, that would reunite Frank and Bob. Great point. Talking about Frank Martin, who's the basketball coach at UMass now. He used to be at South Carolina. He's a Bob Huggins protege. Larry Pilgrim says D.F. Haas, when TCU boys at Utah and BYU were in the Mountain West, it was insanely good. That's a great point, Larry. That was a great conference, man. I hadn't even thought about that. That was a great conference. We need help. We need to help WU out with more local competition. Fern, I wish they would, man. I don't complain about it a whole lot because the Big 12 gave us a home when we needed a home, and I think pretty much they've embraced us. I know most fan bases have, there's a few a-hole fans out there who talk crap about us and say they don't want us in the conference and all this, but for the most part, at least in my interactions with opposing Big 12 fans, it's been mostly positive. I feel like most Big 12 fans have liked having us in the league. I feel like we're a good fit in the league. I feel like we fit the culture of the league really well. And there's just a lot of similarities between West Virginia. It's just the geographic thing is really the only downfall is the geography, the distance. So if they could make like an eastern wing of the Big 12, it would make me a happy man. We could still stay in the league with the Kansases, the Kansas States, the Iowa States, the Oklahoma States, and these other schools, but then go add a few teams from the East, in addition to Cincinnati and UCF, which UCF's not that close either, to be honest with you. We're as close to Iowa State as we are to UCF, but you get my point. Get more teams to make travel a little bit easier. But at least UCF's in Orlando, where they have a major airport where they can, they don't have to take 2 or 3 buses to get there and all this other garbage. Big Dan T says he would like to get Utah in the conference. I mean, it'd be great competition. From a competition perspective, I'd like to have Oregon, Washington, and Utah from a competition perspective. But from a travel perspective, for my team, I don't really want to go further west, but I know it's probably inevitable at some point. Romy one says UMass versus WVU in basketball. I'd give a prediction, but no one knows WVU's roster next season. Exactly. We don't know anybody's roster with the dang transfer portal. JJ Kitchen's on, bro. Ladies and gentlemen, he says, great show, Couz. Big 12 need to attack the Pac-12, Oregon, Washington specifically. I'd love to get Oregon, man. That is the two schools I'd like to get, and I would be willing for them to have to travel for. Because Oregon is a brand, man. Oregon's a national brand. Washington's a good brand in their own right. And, let's face it, for all of us Big 12 heads that want to talk crap about the Pac-12, and I've been guilty of it, Oregon and Washington, if you look at the Big 12 and Pac-12 combined, Oregon and Washington are the two top brands remaining in those two conferences. And whether we like it or not, Oklahoma State and West Virginia are up in the top half. But when you look as far as TV ratings and, size of the fan base and things like that, Oregon and Washington are the top two in those two conferences. And because of those two schools alone, they'll kind of carry the TV deal forward, in my opinion, for the league. But I would love to get them in the Big 12. That's the two teams I'd want if we can get anybody. Would be those two. I think it's a really, really long shot for it to happen. Charles says we already have a national conference pretty much. WU needs closer opponents. And Tony says WU fans get this more than anybody else does. Absolutely. Browns and Bears money just doesn't make sense as of now for the Big 12 to expand unless the Big 12 can negotiate for the 10:30 Eastern time window and steal that from the PAC. But it still doesn't probably make enough. Yeah, it would have to be to me, it'd have to be a large margin, especially with the pro rata clause in there. I've heard some rumors, and Tony, maybe you've heard this, maybe you haven't. I've heard rumors that there's wording in the Big 12 contract that says if they bring other schools in, that it basically changes the agreement. I know maybe they're talking about the pro rata clause. I don't know, but I'm thinking there's more to it than that. But I know the pro rata clause kicks in if they bring in Power 5 schools only, but it's only 60% of the full amount. So you're only talking about $20 million. They're not leaving the Pac-12 for $20 million. No way. They're going to get more than that in their media deal. And don't forget, that's just a media deal. That doesn't count NCAA money, and it doesn't count college football playoff money, which, oh, by the way, the Pac-12 will still get a team in every year, more than likely, or at least most years. So we can't forget that piece of the puzzle. If the Pac-12, would these teams rather stay in a Pac-12 that's somewhat watered down now? Let's face it, with USC gone, UCLA gone, it's going to be a little bit easier to navigate the league, right? It's going to be a little bit easier to win in the Pac-12 now. And if you can win that conference, you may get an automatic bid to the college football playoff. There's a good chance you will. Would you rather do that and pick up that big chunk of change, which is probably going to be 10, 15, 20 million, whatever it is? Maybe I'm trying to think. Let me see. It's probably going to be about 31 to 50. It's probably going to be about 10 million, if I had to guess, ballpark. You pick up an extra $10 million per school there, or would you rather leave the PAC and go to the Big 12, which I don't know, though. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I don't know that winning the Big 12 would be any harder than winning the Pac-12. Not for Oregon or Washington, because they're already upper echelon brands. So, but still that. But they're again, why would they leave conferences for the same money? Essentially, that wouldn't make sense. Be a lateral move at best. My BYU Cougars are looking forward to playing the powerhouse of West Virginia. Talkis Pitt says, I loved Talkis Pitt. I just called you Talkis Pitt. Oh, my God. Somebody shoot me. Holy crap, JJ. I'm sorry, man. I just offended you big time. But anyway, talking college football with JJ Kitchen. He's a Pitt channel. Go check him out. Does great work over there. He and I have worked together a few times. He says, we'd love to see WVU join ACC. Better fit and more potential all around. I'd love for West Virginia being the ACC, only for the travel piece. And it would get our old rivals back, man. It'd be exciting. And that's no shade at the Big 12 guys. Like I said earlier, I love being in the Big 12 from a competitive standpoint. But, man, playing teams that when I could actually go to the games, I can travel to Pittsburgh. I can travel to Blacksburg. I can travel to Charlottesville in 3 hours from my house. I can be in Raleigh, North Carolina to watch an NC State game in 3.5 hours. I could be to Chapel Hill in 3.5 hours. I can Winston-Salem in 2 hours to watch Wake Forest play. I mean, that's what I'm saying, man. It's just, it makes so much more sense for these conferences to be regional. I just don't understand this need and desire. So I mean, I know it's all driven by the almighty dollar, but I've said it a lot before. WVU is as good of a culture fit as we are a geographical fit. I wish Greer wouldn't have opted out when they played Utah. I agree, Larry. I wish they'd have played 2-man. But, you know, he actually said that was as much Dana's fault as his. Dana actually encouraged him to sit out so he could get the backup quarterback some reps. But, you know, who knows? Couz's Corner says, Tony says, that is a rumor that is only spoken of by the one nonsense Twitter account. And I have already forgotten, Tony, what I asked you, to be honest with you. I didn't see your comment when you first made it. We do not have any verification. I don't think the PAC will get. Salt of the Earth. Here's a new chat here. Says, thanks for joining. Obviously a Texas Tech fan. Thanks for hopping on. He says, can't you play them on your non-con games? Yeah, we do. I mean, we're playing Penn State and Pitt this year, but it's not the same. I mean, and you know, those deals, those home and homes or whatever you want to call them, those agreements only last for 2, 3 years, 4 years at a time. You know, if they're in your conference, you're guaranteed to play them, you know, at least every couple of years. And the way these conferences are setting themselves up now, like the SEC, for example, looks like they're leaning towards, you know, playing that they're having like 3 teams that you play every year and then rotating the rest of them. Big 12 could do something similar. For example, if West Virginia was in a conference with Pitt and Virginia Tech, like they used to be, you could have West Virginia play Pitt, Virginia Tech, and just throw Maryland in there because that's an old rival too. Say they play Pitt, West Virginia, Maryland every year, and then the rest of the teams rotate. You know, that's just an example. But yeah, I agree. We are playing them in non-con, but it's just not the same. But I understand what you're saying. And like I said, when I say that, I don't mean it at all to be any negativity towards the Big 12 because I love the Big 12 from a competitive standpoint. A lot of great teams, fan bases are fantastic. It's just, you know, it just doesn't make sense to be playing teams in Texas and Kansas and Iowa in your conference. It's never made sense to me, but it's the world we live in. He says Tony is talking about more money for G5. Oh yeah. Thank you, Charles. I did hear that today on a podcast. Somebody asked the 365 guys about it, I think. Of course, they didn't know either. But, yeah, everything I have read says that the pro rata clause only applies to Power 5 conferences, or Power 5 teams, rather, and that it's only the ESPN portion, which is about $20 million ballpark. So I just don't see it happening. I mean, only way I did read one article that said there's potential that the Big 12 could go out and bring in a third media rights company, third media company, give them some games, and basically renegotiate the deal by adding a third party in, a third rights holder, put that on top of whatever ESPN gives to entice a team to come in. And Mack Rhodes did today, he did acknowledge that it's possible they could use a portion, you know, the buyout money that Texas and Oklahoma are paying. He said it is possible they could use part of that money to help pay for expansion. He said it's not that unusual for that to happen. He said he's not saying it will happen. He's just saying it's possible. So Mack Rhodes did, and he's the Baylor AD. He did say that today. Vernon says, this is a good comment. He says, I don't think the PAC will get anything from Fox. I agree. And the least amount that ESPN can possibly pay them. I believe it will end up all on streaming. I think ESPN will still have a piece of it, Vernon, in my opinion. I just don't think it'll be a big piece. I think it'll be a secondary piece, kind of like Fox is doing for the Big 12. For the Big 12, I think they'll probably have a 30-40% piece of it, and it'll basically be those prime time games in Pac-12's case, which is 10:30 time for us. That's probably the only times they'll that's the slot they're going. That's the slot ESPN wants because they've got every other slot filled with Big 12, ACC, SEC, AAC, whoever. I mean, they don't. We can't forget, guys. These group of 5 conferences have media deals too, and they've got inventory that needs to be put on TV. Some that never gets mentioned. The group of 5 schools are on TV too, and some of them are already locked into deals. Salt of the Earth says, best show, knowledge is unreal, no clown show. Thank you, Salt of the Earth. I appreciate the comment, man. And I appreciate you coming on here supporting what I do. It's people like you guys. This is kind of off topic, and maybe I'm oversharing here, but of course, it's nothing too off personal, but just I'm in a phase now. It's the off season. There has been almost zero news come out about West Virginia, so I'm struggling to find topics to talk about. That's not conference realignment, because I don't want to do just conference realignment stuff, because number one, there's already people doing that. 2, I don't want to get caught in this with conference realignment. It's so easy to speculate and think of, what if scenarios. And I don't mind doing that. I actually enjoy doing that, but it runs the risk of me losing credibility. And I don't want to be a guy who just makes stuff up or, I don't want to. It's just me. It's how I'm wired. And plus I can't go Golden Blue Dude does a lot on realignment, and he does great at it. And, more power to him. I respect what he does, but I just can't, like some of the scenarios he thinks of. I can't think of that. Like my brain just won't go there. And I've even told him that. I said, my brain I can't think up all these scenarios that you think up, man. I can't. I guess I have to look at an article, what's actually being reported, and then give my take on it. I can do that all day long, but to just think of all these crazy scenarios, what could happen if this happens and that happens, it's fun to talk about. But to get on here and make a video about it, I wouldn't do it justice, to be honest, because I just wouldn't be. It wouldn't be realistic to me. And if it's not realistic, I can't get passionate about it. But anyway, I was totally on a soapbox there. But West Virginia probably won't give up that $10 million to add it, in my opinion. I think it depends, Larry, on if it stabilizes the conference long term, and and it might depend on who they're adding as well. Vernon says a lot of good comments. Vernon, he says it is like KU and Mizzou. It was one of the most hateful rivalries for the 110 years we were in the same conference. It fell apart when they went to the SEC. Couz is correct; it isn't the same. Thank you, man. Yeah, I mean the backyard brawl when we renewed it last year was awesome. And it just made us miss it more, man, to be honest with you. I was at that game, and it was an absolute phenomenal atmosphere. I mean, it's one of the funnest. I mean, even though I didn't like the outcome as far as experience, and it was one of the most fun games I've ever been to in my life, man. I mean, it just was awesome, even though we lost. But I had a great time. So the $100 million is already gone, $144 million to the new schools. $20 million to Fox, there, $64 million in the hole. See, Cyclone Steve, that's what I thought too. But when I was listening to I wish I could get Mac Rhodes on my show, or somebody, or Ren Baker from WVU. I would ask him this question. I keep hearing the comment. Mac Rhodes said it again today. It made us whole, made the Legacy 8 teams whole by getting the exit fee. How did it make you whole when you spent 16 and you're only getting 10? I don't understand that. They spent $16 million a school to let the 4 new schools in early to pay for them to join, because they have to be part of the media deal, right? So the other 8 schools had to give up $16 million of their media rights money for these 4 new schools. They're only getting 10 from the exit fee. So how is that making them whole? I don't understand. There's got to be money somewhere else that we don't know about or something. But I've not heard anybody ask that question. Nobody asked the question. How are you feeling the $6 million gap? I did a video. Did the Big 12 make a mistake letting the 4 new teams in early? Because of that gap. And I also did one about, I felt like they should make Texas and Oklahoma pay the full buyout so that they can make the Legacy 8 teams whole, which I got some flack from an Oklahoma fan on because he said, well, it's not our fault y'all let them in early. I said, it is because you're the one leaving the conference. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. They don't want to have to pay us anything. It's ridiculous. They think their poop don't stink. Some of them do, not all of them. It's mainly Texas fans, to be honest, that feel that way. But anyway, Browns and Beer says conference realignment, it feels like you just end up going around in circles and reaching at straws and scenarios. Yeah, and that's what I don't want to get into that, man. And like I said, there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just not how my brain works. And it's not how I don't want my channel. I'm trying to make it different. I'm trying to, differentiate myself from other channels. And if I'm doing the same thing somebody else is doing, then why am I here? You know what I'm saying? It says I don't have the time to do that kind of thinking. YouTube doesn't pay my bills. Me either, Gamecock Chuck. I'd make a little bit on it, but definitely not enough to pay the bills. He says GBD is wild. Yeah, he gets. I mean, I don't agree with a lot of his takes, but I don't have anything against him personally. He's been kind to me, so I have nothing against him, but I don't agree with a lot of his takes. Luis Carter Diaz says it makes sense for the Big 12 to add SDSU. It would get them into Pacific time and coast to coast. They would be the only conference with footprint. Texas and Florida. That's a great point, Luis. I hadn't thought about the Texas, Florida, California piece of that, but you're right. The 3 biggest recruiting hotbeds in the country. That's a great point. But I'm afraid that Pac-12 is going to end up getting you guys, man. I know, Luis, you've always been an advocate of getting into the Big 12, man, but I think you're going to end up in the Pac. Either way, you're still going to be in a Power 5 league, which is, congrats to San Diego State. They deserve it, in my opinion. And that is one of the only group of 5 schools that I would want to add, to be honest, would be San Diego State. I have no desire to add SMU. We don't need another Texas school, in my opinion. That a small Texas school especially. Now, if Texas A&M wanted to come over, that'd be a different ballgame. But we're not losing them. We can't pay them SEC money. But anyway, that being said, I'll see another super chat. How am I missing it here? Oops, 2 of them. John Waffle H2P $1.99 super chat. He says, "What bar would you recommend in Morgantown?" John Waffle, I don't live in Morgantown. Only time I even go is for games, man. So I honestly don't know that much. I didn't go to school there, so I do know Kegler's is fun. It's a sports bar. It's where they hold the coaches shows every week and stuff like that. I've heard a lot of people talk about Kegler's. That's the only one I'm familiar with. Big Dan T says, "Oh man, 1999 super chat. Thank you for the support, my brother." He says, "You know how I feel about the ACC, but I do get why. I would love if the NCAA or whoever would just get teams and conferences to agree to change to regionality. To think regionally, the Texas No U thing has to do with Big 12 not losing face." Yeah, great points. And I do know how you feel about the ACC. And like I said, from a competitive perspective, I'm happy with the Big 12. I just seem to stay. Here's what I would ultimately like to see happen. I would ultimately like to see some of the ACC teams that we like to play, like Pitt, like Virginia Tech. I'd like to see them end up in the Big 12 at some point. That would be the perfect world scenario right there, is if those schools ended up in the Big 12, we could keep playing Kansas State. We could keep playing Kansas, keep playing Iowa State, Oklahoma State. These teams we've built, I don't want to say we built rivalries with, but we've built, respectful, competitive respect with and for. And in the meantime, get back to playing our rivals in conference. That would be ideal, but that's there again. That's going on. That's almost getting into that thinking I mentioned earlier. I just don't see that happening. At least not in the short term. Maybe 20 years from now. Cyclone Steve says it's possible they are thinking the last year of the contract, OU and Texas won't get their approximate $42 million per school. That would make it positive $20 million or about 2.5. Maybe so. That's a good point, Steve. But I think that's the whole point. They're withholding $100 million total, 50 each. They're withholding $50 million per school of their TV rights money. At least that's the way I read it. But like I said, there's got to be some money there that we just don't know about or that they're not reporting on because they keep saying the word made whole. You're not made whole unless the money's equal. Browns and Beer says High Street broadly, the closest to a big city atmosphere is Joe Mama's, Fat Daddy's, Sports Pages, a decent mix of decent bar food and everything else. Kegler's, Mario's Fish Bowl are good off campus. Mario's Fish Bowl is the other one I was trying to think about. It's a very popular spot in Morgantown too. John Waffle. I hope he's still on here. Tony Altamore poor will depressed over Ludwig. Oh yeah, I heard about that. Poor Will. You're talking about Notre Dame Will. I got you, Larry. I didn't know he's talking about there. Yeah, I heard about the whole Notre Dame saga. They can't afford to pay the $2.8 million buyout to an offensive. I think they just refuse to pay it. That's what I think, but that's a whole nother discussion. I think they just think that they're Notre Dame and they shouldn't have to. That's what I think. Vernon says the prime teams from the ACC for us would be Pitt and Louisville on the outside of VTI. I would, because I live only an hour from Blacksburg, I would prefer VT, honestly, but I do get Louisville too. And Louisville, I think Louisville will actually be a great fit for the Big 12, to be honest with you. Their academics are close to ours. I just think they fit. I just think they're more like a Big 12 school. Something about Louisville just screams Big 12 to me. I can't really put my finger on it. One more quick thing I want to talk about before I end this live stream, guys, and it was in my description. I don't think I mentioned it yet, but Houston, their offensive coordinator has left to go to Miami. Shannon Dawson, who actually used to be Dana Holgorsen's coordinator at West Virginia, at least from 2011 to 2014, or 2012 to 2014. 2011, he was a wide receivers coach. He has left Houston to take the offensive coordinator position for Miami under Mario Cristobal. So Shannon Dawson or Houston will be losing their offensive coordinator, and now they'll be in the hunt for somebody else. Now, will they? I'll be anxious to see if Dana actually hires somebody to fill that role, or does he just call plays himself and just promote somebody from within and give him the title, kind of like Neil Brown's probably going to do at West Virginia. He still says he may let Chad call plays. I kind of doubt it. I think he'll probably do it himself again, which I'm not a huge fan of, by the way, but it is what it is. But nonetheless, I think, it wouldn't surprise me to see Dana start calling plays again, unless he can go out and find somebody that he trusts. John Waffle says, plan on making a trip to the Brawl this year. Well, I'm hoping to be there, man. I was actually planning on trying to make it to the Penn State game, but it's just going to be too hard for me to make that game plus the Pitt game, and then I'm actually planning on going to Orlando later in the year to watch a game at the Bounce House. My wife always likes an excuse. My wife loves Florida, and she always, it's kind of an excuse to go to Florida in the fall. We went this past fall. The two of us had a great time, and I think we're going to try to do it again next fall or this coming fall. And while we're there, I want to try to fit in a West Virginia UCF game at the Bounce House. I think that'd be pretty fun. But yeah, so I can't make it to every game. You know what I mean? And so, and Penn State just probably doesn't make sense for me that early in the year to try to make that game. When in 2 weeks I'm going, because I live 3.5 hours from Morgantown, so going to a home game for me is kind of a chore. I mean, it's a whole weekend deal. So, and I want to try to make several of those this year. So I just I've got to pick and choose what games I go to. So the Penn State game's probably not going to happen, even though I would love to. Big Dan T says it would be so sad to see Dana cry after our game in Houston. Man, I was so hoping they would have that game in Morgantown. Browns and Beers says Louisville has a lot of Big 12 energy. Hate the in-state rivalry that's historically better than them. State school, football, basketball are rough, close to as important as each other. Yeah. Romy One says Louisville, Kentucky. I think of MS-13, fentanyl, and riots. U of L, I think of an unpaid prostitute calling the NCAA over not getting paid by U of L. Romy One, man, you have some great comments, man. Oh, geez. You have me rolling, seriously. No pun intended. Larry Pilgrim says, wow, Miami is a mess, and I think Cristobal is a good recruiter and a bad coach. That Dawson hire is surprising to me. Houston's offense was pretty good last year. But, really, if you look at his overall resume, it's not that impressive, in my opinion. When he was at West Virginia, he didn't even call the plays. He was offensive coordinator, but he didn't call plays. Dana called the plays. Dana didn't give up play calling duties until he brought Jake Spavital in his last couple of seasons. But he didn't relinquish play calling duties to Shannon until they were in Houston together. He called plays for 1 year at Kentucky, Shannon did, and he was gone after 1 year. It didn't work out. Then he went to Southern Miss for 3 years, and then he ended up at Houston with Dana. Cyclone Steve says, I don't think I've read this yet. It says if OUT was going to get $42 million per year for 2 years, that's $162 million, $84 million per year. I'm not sure where they are getting the payout. If they only get $84 million from next year, then what? Well, it's a 2-year payout, 24 and 25. Well, no. Good point, Cyclone Steve. You got me thinking now, man. I can't do math on the fly like this. Not good at it. But yeah, $42 million a year is $84 million each, and they're paying $50 million each, so they're not paying the full buyout. But you're right. What about the exit fee? See, they're withholding their TV rights money. What about, are they still making them pay the exit fee on top of that? That's interesting. Because I was always under the impression that the exit fee and the grant of rights / TV money were separate. So basically what it sounds like they're doing, instead of making them pay the exit fee, they're just going to say, okay, instead of giving you your $162 million, we're just going to, or instead of giving you your $84 million, instead of giving you your $84 million, I say, wait a minute. Instead of giving you your $42 million, it's $42 million, right? No, it's for 2 years because I think they're withholding 24 and 20 and 23 and 24. So instead of giving you your $84 million, we're only going to give you $34 million and keep 50 of it. That's the way I understand it. And then they divide that 100. 80% of that's going to Fox to cover the games they're losing, and then the other 80 is staying with the Big 12 and getting divided between the 8 remaining schools. I think that's how it's working. So I'm not sure, Cyclone Steve. There's some unanswered questions with that whole ordeal that I would like to get answered, but unfortunately, I'm not. I don't have any connections at West Virginia, and I'm not a credentialed media member, so I can't get people like Ren Baker on my show, even though I have asked, by the way. Big Dan T says, thank you again, man. Another super chat. You're too generous, Big Dan T. He says, and just wanted to put this out there. Congratulations, Chuck Halley, a Mountaineer and new NFL Hall of Famer. Yes, Chuck Halley, NFL legend, finally in the Hall of Fame, where he deserves to be. He says, I was told the exit fee is waived. They just pay the $40 million to us in 10. Yep, that's what I'm thinking too, Steve. That's exactly what I was thinking. And I'm not happy about that. I'll be straight up honest with you. I'm not happy about that. I feel like we should have gotten more, but at the same time, it's like being in a bad, like I said in my video there, it's like being divorced and living with your ex, man. It's just, I think it's better just to cut bait and everybody move on, even if it costs you a little money in the end, I guess. But man, I know West Virginia, and I'm sure you can speak for Iowa State. We could use that. We could use that money, man. That money would come in real handy. We might have to pay. We might have to pay a. So I guess it'd go down about. We might have to pay about a $12 million coaches buyout next year, man. We could use that money. Oh, geez. Interesting stuff, man. College football. Hardly no off season, guys. Hardly no off season. Well, guys, listen. It's been a great live stream. I appreciate all the super chats. It's been fantastic. I'm humbled and honored by your support. I appreciate all the participation. Appreciate everybody on your way out. If you don't mind, hit the like button on your way out, because this, once I end the live, it'll go up as a, an on-demand video. So the likes are still useful. We'll still help the algorithm. So please hit the like button on your way out. But I appreciate you guys jumping on here, listening to this West Virginia hillbilly talk about college football. It means a lot to me. I really enjoy it. I appreciate it. And until the next show, Q Country Roads, baby.